Okay, so we're diving into the deep end today with a whole treasure trove of IMDb user reviews for Star Wars, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And it's really interesting to see the reactions. Some people loved it, some hated it.
Yeah, it's almost like well, it really goes beyond just good or bad. You get people calling it the most underrated Star Wars film. And right alongside those, you have people saying it's like a total disenchantment with the whole saga.
It's true. It definitely seems like this film really hit a nerve with people. What do you think? What are some of the things that stand out to you from these reviews?
But one of the biggest ones, and this probably won't be a surprise, is Jar Jar Binks. It seems like people either love him or hate him.
Yeah, he's a pretty divisive character.
Right. Some people just find his humor annoying, like a lapstick. They think it's out of place in Star Wars. And then other people, actually, they see him as comic relief. Or even, and this is interesting, I'm seeing this more and more these days, that he's actually underrated.
It is interesting. I remember when I first saw the film, I found him really irritating, actually. But I watched it again recently, and I have to admit I did chuckle at a few of his scenes.
Huh. Maybe it's nostalgia.
Yeah, maybe.
Nostalgia definitely plays a role in how people see The Phantom Menace, especially for those of us who grew up with the prequels. But I think there's something else going on, too. This film came out at a time, a really pivotal moment in cinema, when CGI was taking off.
Right.
And Jar Jar was this completely computer-generated character, so he became a symbol of both the excitement and anxiety people felt about this new technology.
So you're saying that how people reacted to Jar Jar might actually be connected to bigger conversations about technology and filmmaking.
Exactly. Some viewers were amazed by Jar Jar. They saw him as groundbreaking, like a glimpse into the future of special effects. But then others felt he was too artificial, like a cartoon, that he took away from the more realistic, the more practical effects from the original trilogy.
I see. That makes a lot of sense.
And that tension that you're talking about, that tension between technical innovation and storytelling, it comes up a lot in these reviews.
Right. Like I remember one review mentioned the pod race, which was visually amazing, but it felt a bit like a video game cutscene to this person. All flash and no substance.
That's a perfect example. I mean, Lucas was really pushing the limits of CGI in The Phantom Menace. And for some people, that was really exciting. But then for others, it felt like the technology was overshadowing the story.
Yeah, like we were so busy being impressed by the spectacle that we forgot to actually connect with the characters.
Exactly. And that leads us to another point of contention, the dialogue. If you look at the reviews, you'll notice a lot of people found it clunky, too much exposition, and not as witty or emotionally deep as the original trilogy.
There's that line from Qui-Gon Jinn, there's always a bigger fish, which has become a bit of a meme. It's not a bad line on its own, but in that scene, it feels really out of place, especially coming from a Jedi Master.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's almost like it was written for a trailer, not for a real moment of connection between characters.
Right.
And this raises an interesting question about George Lucas as a director. Some people say that he's amazing at world building, and special effects, of course, but that he's not so great with dialogue or character development.
So you're saying that Lucas might have been so focused on the big picture, creating this whole universe, new planets, new creatures, new technology, that he missed some of the smaller moments, the moments that make us care about the characters.
That's definitely worth thinking about, and it's especially relevant when we start talking about Anakin Skywalker, who's at the heart of the whole prequel trilogy.
It's interesting because the reviews you gave me really highlight this, split in how people feel about Jake Lloyd's performance as Anakin. Some defend him. They say he was just a kid, but others think his acting was, well, not so great.
It's a tough one, right? I mean, you have to admire the casting choice to cast a child in such an important role. But at the same time, there are definitely moments where the dialogue sounds stiff and his delivery just doesn't have the emotional weight you would expect, especially knowing what happens to Anakin later on. But here's something really interesting. One of the reviews mentioned that Lucas might have digitally manipulated Lloyd's face in some scenes to make his performance better.
Really?
Yeah.
Like some early deep fake technology or something.
Exactly.
That's impressive.
Even back then, Lucas was pushing the boundaries of digital effects, and it makes you think about the line between a real performance and manipulation. Like, how much is technology shaping what we see on screen?
It really makes you wonder how much of what we see is actually the actor and how much is just digital enhancement.
It's a question that becomes even more relevant. When you consider the bigger picture of The Phantom Menace, this film was a huge shift towards digital filmmaking. Lucas really embraced CGI in a way that nobody had done before.
And that caused some controversy, right, with fans who felt like it was a departure from the original trilogy.
Exactly. Some people felt like it lost that tangible, that gritty realism.
Right. Speaking of authenticity, let's talk about something else that caused a lot of debate. The midi-chlorians. A lot of the reviews were really angry about
Oh,
them.
yeah. The midi-chlorians, they're probably the most divisive part of the whole prequel trilogy.
A lot of fans felt like the Force was supposed to be this mystical thing,
Right.
a spiritual energy field, something you can't explain scientifically. So to suddenly have these tiny organisms in your blood that determine your connection to the Force, it felt like a betrayal.
It's like trying to explain the magic of a rainbow by talking about wavelengths of light. It just loses its wonder.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I can see what Lucas was trying to do. He wanted to expand the universe, explore new sides of the Force, give it a more concrete foundation.
But for a lot of people, it just felt like too much.
Like he was over-explaining something that was better left mysterious.
It strikes me that both Jar Jar Binks and the midi-chlorians represent this tension between innovation and tradition, which runs through the whole film. Lucas was clearly trying new things, but in doing so, he alienated some of the core fans.
That's a great point. It's like he was building a bridge between the past and the future of Star Wars, but the bridge collapsed.
And speaking of ambition, we can't forget Darth Maul, one of the most visually striking characters in the whole saga. A lot of the reviews praise his design, his double-bladed lightsaber, his presence.
Right.
But there's also this feeling of disappointment that he dies so quickly.
Not enough Darth Maul. That's a common complaint.
Yeah.
It's almost as if Lucas was so focused on all the new stuff, Jar Jar, the midi-chlorians, the CGI, that he didn't give enough time to some of the characters, who could have been really special.
Right.
Darth Maul is a perfect example. He looked amazing. He had this aura of mystery and danger. But we barely got to know him.
It feels like a missed opportunity. It's interesting to compare Darth Maul to Jar Jar Binks. They're both visually striking and kind of unconventional.
Yeah.
But one was loved by fans, and the other was mostly hated.
And I think it comes down to how they were used in the story.
I think you're saying it's not just about how a character looks, it's about how they fit into the narrative.
Exactly.
How they contribute to the themes, to the emotional arc of the story.
Darth Maul, even though he wasn't on screen for very long, he had a clear purpose.
Right.
He was a powerful enemy, a symbol of the dark side. He drove the plot forward.
But Jar Jar felt more like an afterthought.
Yeah.
A comic relief character who didn't really add much to the story.
It was there for the kids,
Yeah.
and Darth Maul was there for the adults.
It makes you wonder who the Phantom Menace was really made for.
Right.
Was it a kids' movie with the slapstick humor and the colorful visuals, or was it for the older fans who grew up with the original trilogy?
It seems like Lucas was trying to please everyone.
Yeah.
But maybe he ended up pleasing no one.
It's a tough balance to strike.
For sure. And this tension between appealing to a broad audience and staying true to the spirit of the franchise, it's something that Star Wars still struggles with today.
It's like the Phantom Menace opened up this Pandora's box of questions about the direction of the saga.
And we're still trying to answer those questions today.
It's amazing to me how even the most negative reviews still have this passion behind them. Like, people wouldn't be so critical if they didn't actually care about Star Wars.
Right. It shows how powerful this franchise is. It started so many conversations, debates, even arguments. People are really invested in this universe, and they want to see it done right.
It goes beyond just the big stuff, too. Like, you'll find reviews that praise the smallest details. The design of a spaceship, or a specific piece of music.
It's like every little piece of the puzzle matters to these fans.
Yeah.
And that attention to detail, that world building, it's part of what makes Star Wars so immersive, so long-lasting. It feels like a real place with its own history and culture.
It's funny, though, because even with all the criticism of the Phantom Menace, there are still plenty of people who just enjoy her.
Yeah, they recognize the flaws, but they still find something to like about it.
I think it's nostalgia.
Nostalgia's a powerful thing.
For a lot of viewers, the Phantom Menace takes them back to their childhood.
Back to when they first saw Star Wars?
It might not be the best film in the saga,
Right.
but it has a special place in their hearts.
I read one review that said, this movie did for me what Episode 4 did for a lot of other people. It made me love Star Wars.
Exactly. It might not be perfect, but it brought back that feeling, that sense of wonder and excitement.
And sometimes that's enough. A film doesn't have to be perfect to be meaningful. It can make you feel something, take you to another world, and leave a lasting impression.
I think it reminds us that film criticism is about more than just pointing out flaws. It's about understanding the effect a film has on people, the memories it brings back, the conversation it starts.
The Phantom Menace definitely did that. It might not be everyone's favorite, but it's definitely part of the Star Wars legacy.
Well, this deep dive has been fascinating. It's given us a real insight into the Star Wars fandom.
It has.
We've seen the passion, the dedication, and yeah, even the frustration that fans have for this franchise.
It's a reminder that the Force is with us. Always.
Whether we're arguing about midi-chlorians or cheering for our favorite pod racer.
Exactly. 10 RCS.